Oh my God. I now just started recording.
Yeah.
How do I give you permission? Rivka, how can I give Gail permission? Yeah, you can't look it up because we don't have an interview.
Well, we
You
can
know
talk.
what? You know what? I'm recording. I'm going to do my best. Hi. Crazy traffic. Yeah. We walk, we took a bus one way and walked back. So we live Baruch Hashem close enough, but there were cars everywhere. Yeah. Derech Beit Lechem. It was, what was, Pekak Beit Lechem. It was, it was, and Derech Hebron. They're just traffic jams. Yeah. Okay. So I'm recording. When I'm done, I'm going to figure out how I can send it to you. Okay, Gail? Yeah, we'll work on it, which means Rivka will tell me how to do it. Okay. Okay, so I want to start on the sheet, which is the portrait size, where it says Pach Hashemen, which we usually translate as the cruse of oil or the container of oil. In modern Hebrew, Pach is a trash can. But this does not mean a trash can of oil. It meant the container. Okay, and so it begins with the famous, the text that I'm reading from is from a sefer that's written by Rav Shlomo Aviner. Rav Shlomo Aviner, who is the Rav of Beit El. And most of the material that I'm going to be reading from him are quotes from his Rebbe's Rebbe, Rav Kook. So Rav Aviner was a student of a number of the students of Rav Aviner, mostly Rav Chalap. And so he considers himself, I'm sorry? He considers himself a, part of that line of Torah thought. And so we're going to be talking things from Rav Kook as quoted to us by Rav Aviner, but it begins with the famous Gemara in Shabbos. Now, the Gemara, the Mishnah, I should say, barely mentions Chanukah. There is no Masechet, there is no chapter. It gets mentioned a couple of places because of certain minhagim. But the Gemara mentions Chanukah, and Chazal were a little bit embarrassed talking about Chanukah because the descendants of the Maccabim, the Hasmonean kings, became Kohanim who were kings. That's a no-no. Number two, the Hasmonean dynasty threw in their lot with the Sadducees, the Tzaddukim, the anti-rabbinic party. So the Tanaim, who are the Perushim, the Pharisees, who didn't like the Tzaddukim, they sort of soft pedal the Hanukkah story, but the people loved it, and so it squeezes its way back into the Talmud after the Mishnaic period, and it's brought down in the second chapter of Masechet Shabbat, where it talks about lighting candles. So first it talks about lighting candles on Shabbos and the rules and the types of oil you can use, right? And then it goes into this little piece of the Gemara, right underneath which says Pach Shemen. It says, Kishagavra Malchut Beit Chashmona'i v'nitzchum. And when the kingdom of the house of the Hasmoneans, in other words, they are, it's Gavi, I don't know what to tell you, it's a problem. I'm connected to my phone, or his son is calling. So tell him that you can't talk to him now. I'm gonna lose the share.
Gabi, I can't talk now. Sorry, I can't.
8:30.
I'll call you at 8:30. Okay?
Okay, sorry, I apologize, okay? So what already we're seeing that this statement from this Braita quoted in the Gemara is already giving credit to these Kohanim who were kings. And it's like there's a little embarrassment going on here, but okay. So that's how it starts. And they were successful. Badku, they mounted a search in the Beit HaMikdash. They found only one container of oil. You all know the story. That was sitting there with the gushpanka, with the hashgacha, with the seal of the Kohen Gadol. Okay? There's only enough water for one day. But it lasted 8 days. So we know that this is the core source of the miracle of the oil, which shouldn't come as a major surprise to us. The Talmud in many places tells us about miracles that happened to the sages that are not recorded anyplace else. And we believe that there's something to these miracles. So it doesn't disturb us. The Gemara Talmud is filled with stories of miracles that aren't recorded elsewhere. What should disturb us a little bit is how come the other sources that talk about other things going on, including the miracle of the war, don't mention the oil. So what we have to do over the next few minutes is talk about what's the importance of the oil, and then we're going to see a little bit later than that, we're going to take the miracle of the oil and refer it back to the war. Now, I have to let you know, we have in our Tanakh many miracles. Very few of them get holidays. Now, there is a holiday for the splitting of the Red Sea, the 7th day of Pesach, and for the getting the Torah, but there's no holiday for the splitting of the Jordan. There's no holiday for the miraculous victory of Deborah over Sisera. There are just so many miracles that happen. There's no holiday for the miracle of Eliyahu HaNavi bringing a fire down from heaven. We have a lot of miracles. They don't usually get holidays. So in other words, the holiday of Chanukah, like we said last week, is based upon the victory in the war more than the miracle of the oil. And that's why those other sources are really talking about the war. But let's think oil for the next few minutes. My wife and I had latkes for supper tonight. I'm not only thinking oil, I am oozing oil. But okay, let's take a look at the bottom of the portrait page. And there's a paragraph that starts with, there's the heading, Kad HaKemach. Kad HaKemach means a container, a pitcher of flour. And this book was written by Rabbi Bechaye. I don't know when he wrote the book. I'm not sure we know. But he died in 1340. And he's a very, very famous Sephardic authority and a great student of the Ramban. And he wrote a parish, a very famous parish on Chumash, but he also wrote a book called Kad HaKemach about Jewish practices. And the name is cute because Jewish practices are like the kemach, the flour of Judaism. They're the stuff that you put together to make the bread or the cake, which is Judaism. And it's a play on the fact that we say, Im ein kemach ein Torah. If there isn't flour, there isn't Torah. But here he's saying, oh, I'm going to teach you about the kemach of Torah, which are the Jewish practices. And here he has a little piece about the significance of the Chanukah candles. And he writes, Umin hayadua, it's well known. I always hate it when rabbis say that. I hate it when anyone says that because they, it's very well known. And then, they tell you something you never heard of. It's like a very subtle put down. But anyways, okay. It's min hayadua, it's very well known. Ki ma'aseh hamenorah v'shar klei hamishkan hakol haya remez v'tziur l'devarim sichliim. It's very well known that the menorah, the candelabrum in the temple, and all of the utensils of the temple were a hint, and it's like a picture to help us understand many cognitive ideas, devar sichliim, seichel, things that are very important in terms of cognition. Kashem shahaya Gan Eden, it's just like Gan Eden. You know, in other words, the temple is like a model place that the Torah tells us to build with all of this symbolism to teach us ideas. And you know what? This is the idea that we see in Torah, because even Gan Eden was like that. Even the Garden of Eden was Shadar Bo Adam Arishon, where first man lived. V'narotel ve'elonav ramzu le'inyanim ruchaniim. All of the physical attributes, the rivers and the trees, they may have been physical objects, but they were really symbols of spiritual matters. Everything in the Beit HaMikdash, just like everything in the Garden of Eden, isn't just an object. It's also a major symbol for a very strong and extremely profound spiritual idea. Zehu shetimsa katuv b'klei Mishkan, and we find concerning the utensils of the Mishkan, and he quotes pasuk here from Shemot, where they were building it. Ure'eva say, I'm sorry, it's too late for me to say, Betavni tam asher atam mareh bahar, and you should make it like the form that you saw on the mountain. Now, the Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't give Moshe Rabbeinu and B'Tzalel, diagrams. He showed them a picture in heaven. It was like a nevuah. They looked in this heaven. They saw, oh, make it like that. Make it look like that. So in other words, the objects in the Beit HaMikdash weren't only in the Beit HaMikdash, they were also in heaven. They are connectors between the spiritual realm and the physical realm. I said that backwards. The physical realm and the spiritual realm. Okay? Spiritual's up there. Okay. B'zeh yirem shera'a bahar dugma shalahem inyanei yediyah v'chachma hanimazim be'ela. And they saw in heaven things that helped them and explained to them. I hope the directions were better than the directions for making Legos, which I can't put together. But I hope they, anyways, I hope they had it showed, put this in, socket A into space B and whatever. Okay. But it was shown in heaven. It was shown in Shemayim. Okay. וגם ידוע כי הדלקת נרות המנורה עצו השכינה לא מעלה ולא מוריד. And so it too with the candelabrum. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need these candles in the Beit HaMikdash. I mean, lo ma'ale v'lo morid. It doesn't make any, literally that means there's no up and no down, but it literally means it makes no difference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu whether or not there's a night light in the Beit HaMikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need light to see. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere and sees all, So in other words, obviously everything is symbolic. Ki mi shekatubo, concerning him it is said, unahora ameh shara. Okay, and it says that the light is with him. This is Aramaic. In the book of Daniel, it's about 2/3 Aramaic. And the light is Nahora, is the near, and the or is with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is light. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to us, that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. He doesn't need these candles. Uketiv, and Yechezkel writes, Va'aret he'ira michvodo. The whole universe, the whole world is lit from the glory of Hashem. So what can we do to provide light for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who is kulo light? He's entirely light. Maya tzarech l'nerot basar v'dam. What does the Kadosh Baruch Hu need with flesh and blood made candles? Aval hakavana hayata lemalat Beit HaMikdash, and the intent was for the benefit of the Beit HaMikdash. Ulichvodo kidei likvoa benefesh goldo malat habayit ulahagdil ercho be'enei kol ro'av. It was for us. It was for all of the people that would go to the Beit HaMikdash. So everything about the candles is for us. So don't look at the candles being lit as something HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs. It's something that we need. So the miracle of the candles is somehow for us. And then the question comes up, what do we get? What does the miracle of the candles do for us? And that idea is, please now go to the landscape, okay? The horizontal page. And again, we're going to start with a quote from the Gemara in Shabbos, and then we're going to quickly go into Rav Kook, as quoted for us and as excerpted for us by Reb Shlomo Aviner Shlita, the chief rabbi of Beit El. Near Chanukah, mitzvah lanichu al petach beito mibachutz. The mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candle is that you do it near your doorway and you do it on the outside. In Yerushalayim, it's very common to see people take a box and they leave it outside, and it's outside the home, and you can walk by and see the candles. It's so cool with some of the, well, look, I live in Baca. We have a number of wealthy people in our area, and they have like these stone walls outside. So built in to some of these stone walls is this kusa with the glass. It's very cool to see, the Chanukah there. But well, I'm not in trouble, but my candle's here in the house in the front window because I don't live on the first floor. But if there's a danger to light the candles, then do it on the table inside the house, and that's good enough. Okay, so the candles can reflect. Remember, candles are all symbolic, right? But they can reflect the nature of what the nation is going through. When times are good and you're living in a place where you feel, you feel secure and you feel like in control of your life, so put the candles outside. But when you're in a difficult situation, it's just for us on the inside. So now the candles, mean something to us, but it's not so clear exactly how and why and what's going on. So Rav Kook is now going to talk about that idea. And it's right underneath the quote from the Gemara, again on the horizontal, the landscape side. Shichrur ruchani ula'umi. We have, at the Chanukah story, I would like to think this is true of, Milchamat Ha'atzmaut also, the War of Independence here in Eretz Yisrael. It was shichrur, freedom, that was both ruchani, spiritual, but also le'umi, but also nationalistic. It served a national purpose, but also a spiritual purpose. I hope that's true of our Medina, that it's not just taking care of our nationality issues for the safety of the Jewish people. I hope it's also serving our spiritual needs, but that's a discussion for another time. Maybe we'll talk about that when we get close to Yom Ha'atzmaut. Shichruro shel ruach Yisrael hamiyuchad b'taharato hapnimit. The freedom, shichrur, the liberation of the Jewish spirit, the unique Jewish spirit, which is unique in its inner pnimit, its inner tahara, purity. Me'eket haruach hayavani hamitadeh b'yafifiyuto hachitzona. It is opposite. It is like the mirror image, if you will, of the Greek spirit. The Greek spirit is wonderful in its beauty on the outside. Judaism is beauty on the inside, and Greek Hellenistic civilization is beauty on the outside. The beautiful buildings and the beautiful vases and you know, and all of that. That underneath it, on the inside, it is ugly and tameh, impure. So that we are all about panemiut, inner reality. Greek Hellenistic culture is all about chitzoniut, outside. Outside glory. Tochen milchemet hachashmonaim biyavanim hu milchemet haruach. The nature, the content of the war of the Hasmoneans against the Greeks was a spiritual war. Ruach Yavan Yafem mibechutz u'mekulkelet mibifnim. The Greek Hellenistic spirit is beautiful on the outside and ichsa, disgusting on the in. It was beautiful on the outside, but it's disgusting on the inside. Bechutz hakol yafeh. On the outside, everything is beautiful. Hatarbut, the culture, philosophia, the philosophy, hanimusim, the niceties, the politeness of society. Ach bifnim hakol malay tuma v'kilkul. But on the inside, it's disgusting and gross. And as my kids used to say, and my grandchildren now say, ichsa. Amru Chazal, Chazal talk about this. Our sages say, ala pasuk yafeh Elokim liyafet v'yishkon ba'ol Hashem. After the flood and the sons are getting blessed, not Ham, sinned, he wasn't blessed, but there's blessings for Shem and Yafet, but it says God gives to Yafet, beauty, like Yafet. Yafet is like Yafet, Vayishkon, but it dwells in the house of Shem. The beauty of Yafet is only truly valuable when it's in the tent of Shem. We are the Shemites. The Semites, we're the descendants of Shem. Greeks are the descendants of Yafet. The Baruch Shel Yafet Yehiyu Ba'ol Hashem. The major accomplishments and stuff of Yafet is only worthwhile when it's in the tents of Shem. I'm not against beauty. Tabut or safrut, I'm not against culture or literature. But all of those wonderful things, all those cultural niceties are only of value when they are within the walls of the Jewish home, the Jewish community. In other words, we have to be in control of how this culture gets spread and used, more used. Hashichruim at the bottom two lines on the right side. Hashichrush says Achinu lo al yedei hidaurut hakadusha shel tchiyat haruach halaumi, the freedom that we achieve through this awakening, this awakening of sanctity, through the tchiyat haruach, the life of spirit, of spirituality, the national spirituality, al yedei giborei kinat hakodesh hachashmonim, by in the hands of those zealots of the Chashmonim, who were HaKohanim HaKadoshim, the holy Kohanim. Zehu hatzad hasheni shel milchemat haruach. That's the other side when you're fighting a spiritual war. HaMilchama HaFizit. So there's two things going on. This war against the Hellenist Seleucids from Syria, right, who were the descendants of Alexander the Great and the Greeks. When we fought them, we weren't just fighting a physical war and fought these big battles. which we did, and Baruch Hashem, we won some. But we're also fighting what's called a Kulturkampf. That's a German word that means a cultural war. Okay, that's what was going on. It was simultaneous. The two things are going on. Hagvura Halaumit, the national bravery, Zohi Milchemet Ruach Shemimushahu Derech Milchemet Laumit. So the spiritual war came to fruition. Mimushi came to reality as a national war, physical war. But it was really a spiritual war that we were meant to fight. At Kushiyatav HaMifozemet Shel HaBeit Yosef. And this helps us to understand the famous question of the Beit Yosef. Okay, here's the famous question of the Beit Yosef. We're going to do this very fast. The Beit Yosef asks in his parish on the Torah Shulchan Aruch, how come there's 8 days of Pesach, 8 days of Chanukah? I mean, look, there was enough oil for 1 day, and so really it should only be 7 days of miracle. How come there is 8 days? There was a book that came out, I'm going to say 20 years ago, probably more, that had 101 answers to that particular question. But right now, Rav Kook and Rav Aviner are only concerned with one answer, and that answer is the first day was for the war. There were 7 days were for the miracle that the oil lasted for 8 days when there was only enough oil for one. But the first day wasn't about the oil, even though some people say the miracle was finding the oil. That's another interpretation. But it was, we're thanking God for the war. So in other words, the candles in our window are celebrating both the physical war and the spiritual war. And the battles, Emmaus and all those battles, they represent the physical war, but the candles and the oil represent winning the spiritual war. And so that's the point that he's making. But I just want to do the last 2 lines of that paragraph on the left-hand side of the page at the top, that paragraph, just the last 2 lines. Milchama ben Ruach Yisrael and Ruach Yavan. That what was really going on was a war between the spirit of Israel and the spirit of Yavan. V'mei Chashmonaim, in the days of the Chashmonaim, Hidnotzitzam Milchama Zu L'Rishana. This war between the Jews and other cultures, Hidnotzitzu, sparked, flamed out for the first time in that war. This is the first time that we really fought a cultural war. Before this, when we fought wars, it was life and death over land or power, things of that nature. Sometimes it was trade. But this is the first time that we fought a war for spiritual purposes. Umamshicha ad hayom. And that battle for the souls of people continues to this day. So the point that's going on here is that, at least according to Rav Kook, quoting from the Beit Yosef, Rav Yosef Karo, the Mechaber, of course, wrote this in the middle of the 16th century, is that when you look at the Chanukah, you're celebrating both the physical war and the spiritual war. Which means I may not have to mention both. If I mention one, the other should be understood in its wake. So if I have a book, the Book of Maccabees, telling me about the physical war and how they won and they fought against the assimilationist Jews and the Hellenistic Greeks and the Seleucid Syrian Empire, okay, but it teaches me really that we won the culture comp as well. However, the candles are showing me something different. They're showing me, yeah, but we fought this war, but the ikar of the war was the spiritual, and Hashem brought the miracle of the oil to let us know that we didn't beat the Greeks because we were better warriors than the Greeks. It's letting us know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by giving us the miracle of the oil, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting his seal of approval on our war. That we won the war because HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed our efforts. That's how we won. They're the same thing. They're the same thing. And that's what's so important, because what happened at the end of the war, there were people in Jerusalem. And here comes the Hashmonaim, and they won a big battle in the Maoist, and they bring their army into Jerusalem, and they take back over their Beit HaMikdash, and they start cleaning up, and they say, well, okay, so today you won, but the Greeks are going to be back. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu felt, HaKadosh Baruch Hu demonstrated that no, this war was under the hashgacha was under the seal of approval of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted this war and wanted us to defeat this Greek culture. This isn't just, right now, the Hashmonaim, Maccabees, Hasidim won, the Greeks will come back. That's not what it's about. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to show people that this war was what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Because the people that became Greek Hellenists, they thought this is the way it was supposed to be. We're supposed to wear togas. We're not supposed to do Brit Milah. We're supposed to learn, we're supposed to learn, algebra and math and philosophy and science. That's what we're supposed to do. And the Kodesh Baruch Hu said, no, yeah, you can learn that stuff, but that's not the Ikar. The Ikar stays Judaism. And so the miracle is teaching us that. This Chanukah should only bring us many miracles and to bring us awareness of a new beginnings. Oh, wow, yes, indeed. Okay? I mean, maybe I shouldn't stop and do this, but there is in the air an optimism. Chanukah is bringing it up. I think it's not a coincidence that that the first okay in the distribution of the vaccine, of the chisun, is on Chanukah. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that there is an optimism in the air. We were on Midrachov, like I said, and there was this nice Israeli family, and we're just schmoozing with them about how we're looking forward to things coming back, and and isn't this wonderful? And I think that I think that it's true that we feel a sense Chanukah is a time for miracles. Yes. Okay, before I wrap up, okay, I want to do one more paragraph that says hatahalich, the process. Okay, a tahalich is a process. Comes from the word holech, to go. It's how you get from point A to point B. It's a tahalich. It's a process. And Rav Kook is going to use that word in a second. Hahitnagshut shel ruach Yavan im ruach Yisrael. The competition, the clash, if you will, of the Greek spirit with the Jewish spirit, zehu process. It's a process. That's how Rav Kook wrote in Hebrew the word process. It's a process. In other words, we don't mind using the culture of Greece /Yefet, as long as it's in our ohel, the tent of Shem. In other words, as long as we have control over how it's used. The same thing is true with technology. There's nothing evil about a computer. What's bad can happen from a computer is how we use it. So we have to use it with hashgacha. We have to use it with common sense and with supervision. We have to be in control, not of the technology, but the use. Technology is kosher. We just have to know how to apply it. That's what the Reb Kook is saying. It's a process, and that process continues. Remember the last paragraph, ad hayom, to this very day. Hamilchama, I'm back in that last paragraph on the left-hand side, on the bottom, but end of that first line. Hamilchama ben Ruach Yisrael Ruach Yavan, he process. The war that was between Greeks and Jews, Hellenists, and Israel is a process, and it's continuing. It just goes on and on and on. Judaism doesn't shirk from the world. I mean, it's so, we feel so good when we see how much we contribute to, to culture and to making the world a better place. That's the way it should be. But we need to have a spiritual hashgacha over the technological breakthroughs and all of the technology. Tahalich, it's a process. Yefsha l'saimo b'pitomiut. You can't end it like that. It doesn't end in a flash. Pitom means immediately. It doesn't end in a flash. B'bat achat ulenetzach. It doesn't end like one time and then it's over. Zuhi hiknagshut matmedet umimushechet. It is an eternal and continual battle. We're always battling the predominant cultures around us, and we are filtering which of those technologies and cultural advances we're going to allow into the Jewish home. It continues. V'yachalof zman rav ad lenitzachon shalom. And it's gonna go a long time before we have the complete victory, which is, of course, another way of saying Mashiachiyut, of saying, the Geula Shlema. We will have conquered how we're supposed to use the world. Zehu process she'enu posek ad asher yefuach hayom hagadol. This process is not going to end until there blossoms the great day. Geula. Asher bo yeh nitzdak kodesh. On that day, the sanctity will be victorious. That's the day we're looking for. In other words, until then, it's from Chanukah to today. It's a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's going to remain a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until Mashiach. B'yom hagadol yakiru kulam she'kodesh tzadek. On the great day, everyone's going to recognize that sanctity was always right. Aval zehu talich aroch. But this is a long process. Tell me about it. I mean, it's going on already 2,200 years. That's a long, that's a long process. Below b'yom echad. If I can make an editorial comment, it's sort of like this. From the time of Abraham until the time of Ezra, Judaism fought idolatry. We won that battle. Baruch Hashem. The Gemara says that in the time of Ezra, sometime in the 4th century BCE, 5th century BCE, the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah disappeared. Starting a century or two later, another war started. We're no longer battling Avodah Zarah. Now we're battling Greek culture. In other words, the concept of Olam Hazeh is struggle. And Chanukah is celebrating our first victory in that struggle. Okay? The lo b'yom echad yukar hadavar. And this thing isn't going to be recognized in one day. Kamo kol inyan ruchani. That's true of every spiritual thing. Physical things, you can build a building very quickly. Spiritual things take longer. To build to become, a kosher yid and to build a spiritual reality, it's a lot of work and it takes time, not just the effort, but it's a struggle that goes on and on and on, because the world, in the words of William Wordsworth, the world is too much with us. the physical is pulling us. But with this continual struggle, we can have sanctity control the physical stuff around us. That's okay. Nidresha tekufa aruka. It requires, it demands a long period ad shetiklot v'te'achel oto ruach adam, until everybody, two great words, klita, until everybody absorbs and misrata klita, the absorption ministry, okay, and te'achel, and digests, okay, the true spirit of humanity. In other words, we've got to absorb it, and we also have to digest it. It takes a while, to bring it in, and then to get used to it. Okay. That something can't happen quickly, but batachat, in an instant. Ma mashma'ut hamusag talich. What do we mean by this expression tahalich, a process? Talich hu hidrachashut b'metziut hamiyatzeret kelim b'hafota. It is this sense about reality that creates the impression of things, that creates how we see things. V'hakelim halalu atzma meviim l'shlav haba behitpatchut hametziut. And these utensils, these kelim that we need to really become more spiritual themselves, bring us to the next stage of the development of reality. In other words, we continually absorbing new ideas. Okay, first we had to absorb technology, then we have to absorb medicine, we have to absorb psychology. That takes a while. All of these new developments takes a while for us to take them and absorb them into our spiritual body and be able to utilize them and remain spiritual. I mean, you can throw it all away and just become a Greek. I mean, anyone can do that. But we can take this stuff and convert it and make it usable for Judaism. Okay? We can, people were afraid when the printing press, came on the scene. Oh, that's going to take away from the sanctity of books. And we became the biggest users of books. Okay? A lot of, machine-made matzah, that people thought that was a work of the devil. Okay? I mean, it takes us a while to absorb it. Okay? People didn't want to use telephones. People didn't want to use trains. There's a famous board from the Chavetz Chaim in the late 1800s. He said, it's wonderful that people now have telephones. I don't know how many people in Radin had telephones in the 1890s, but okay, but they knew about them. So he said, it's wonderful because it lets you know that something I say here in this room has impact way on the other side of Poland, because I can talk to somebody there. And he used it as a Musar idea for his famous books on Lashon Hara. I mean, it's like, we have to take all of technology and convert it. We have to make it Jewish, and that's our job. Okay, we have to do it with Hashgacha. And the same thing was going on with the Greeks. We had to fight a war. Then Kadosh Baruch Hu had to let us know with the miracle of the candle that the war was under divine supervision. It had, didn't have an OU stamped on it. It had HaKadosh Baruch Hu stamped on it. And that we need the skills, the kisharon. We have to have the skills to utilize these things in positive ways. The process produces its own new ideas to help us absorb the material and can help us get to our final destination. In other words, the technology, whether it's the printing press or it's Zoom on your computer, We are taking all of these technologies, these new processes, and we're incorporating them into our Judaism. And it's just an amazing reality that these things that we looked at not that long ago as bad guys and enemies and dangers, no, they can use this. You know, when Rabbi Avram Tversky became a psychiatrist in the 50s, people thought that's a terrible thing. Psychiatry, ooh, that's negative Torah. But he has used it to really bring so many people back to Torah. We just have to know how to view the Greeks, and we have to continue this war. Chanukah is the most relevant holiday that we have. And there's two parts to the holiday. The number one part is the war, and we have to continually fight all of those powers and all of those forces that are inimical to everything that we stand for. And then there is the candle, which helps us put the Ruchani light onto the things. Do you know the most important idea in all of this about the role of the candle vis-a-vis the war? When the war was over and Maccabim came to Jerusalem, I was starting to mention this a minute ago, and then they lit the candles, and the candles showed, wow, they continued lighting. It says in the Gemara that they didn't make a yontif right away. It said Shana Acheret, another year. We don't even know how many years it was. It could have been 10 years. I don't know how many years. Shana Acheret could be next year, or it just could be another year, whatever. It took the Jews, many of whom were on the other side, a while to see and understand, hey, you know, the Maccabim were right. This is a war we had to fight. Otherwise, Judaism would become Hellenism and disappear. And it took a while. And that's why the Sfat Emet explains that on this holiday, we have to do both Lahodot or Lahalel. What's the difference between Hallel and Hoda'ah? Hallel is, wow, it happened. Yay, that's Hallel. You just burst out. Hoda'ah is you're absorbing it and thinking about it. And Hoda'ah means acknowledgement. I know we translate as thank you, but it really means Hoda'ani, Modeh, I acknowledge. And that takes a while to acknowledge things. So that's why this holiday needs both. We have to have Hallel and Hodah, because there's the wow factor from the war. It's the candle that helped bring us to the acknowledgement level, and that took time. So even though the initial sources don't mention the miracle of the oil, that's because that to them, that wasn't the big miracle. To them, the big miracle is the war. The fact that oil lasted longer, there were a lot of miracles that happened. There were the doors of Nicanor, and there were a lot of miracles happened in those days that didn't get into the story. They're into Midrashim later, whatever. And they said, okay, we were talking about the war. But later the rabbis looked back on it and they said, let's emphasize that candle, because if you don't emphasize the candle, which throws light onto what happened, and see that it's the Kedusha and the Tahara which ultimately wins, and it's the Ruchniyat that it's all about. It's not, don't make that mistake of thinking it's about who's the strongest. It's about who's the most spiritual, who's the most pure. And the rabbis then flipped the importance to the Ruchani. Now you can say there were other reasons, because we know when they finally said this, we no longer had an independent government. And so maybe, we had to stress the Ruchniyat over the Gashmiyat because we weren't in control anymore. It can give, historical reasons, but I think they said this is what the people of our generation need. And I'm going to say something maybe a little bit controversial. I think every generation has to decide which part of the miracle is most important for their spiritual and physical growth. Sometimes you need the war. Sometimes you need the candle. But Baruch Hashem, we have both. And that's what makes Chanukah so powerful. You don't necessarily have to mention both. Okay. Thank you. Someone just said amen, and someone else said wow a minute ago. I thought I shocked them by screaming wow. But okay. If anyone has any question on any of this, bevakasha, please ask it before I just fall asleep. Thank you all so much for joining this evening. Believe me, that I'm going to get back to a regular sheet that'll have some English on it, maybe a picture. I'm so embarrassed about the daf that I gave out this week, but this is where I had the material I wanted to share with you from Rav Kook and Rav Avinir. So everyone have a freilichen Chanukah. The rest of the nights of Chanukah should be nothing but light and ruchniut and spirituality. Thank you for forgiving me for not having a very nice sheet this week. Okay, a call to, and again, thank you all for joining, and Chanukah Sameach and freilichen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll wait another minute. If anybody has a question, something that wasn't clear.
It's also clear.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It was very clear.
Very much.
It was very clear. Call hakavod.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rabbi.
Thanks for putting a whole new spin onto Chanukah for me. A
Oh,
whole
thank
new
you.
meaning.
Okay.
Much more profound than I've ever
Hanukkah's big on
heard.
spin.
Pardon?
Hanukkah's big on spin.
Well, there you are.
No, it's not just a children's holiday. Thank you.
Oh, definitely not. No. It's a wonderful children's holiday, but the ideas in it are really very deep, truly
Yeah.
profound.
Never
You
knew.
don't,
Thank
you
you.
don't usually hear those ideas, It's
Thank you.
Yeah. We have. Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much to everybody.
Okay.
Thanks so